morning, all. We just happy to be here, and we're thankful for Brother Guy to ask us to select a series uh, to present here, and we're just so thankful for his decision to include us. And we, I guess I'll start by saying I'm Wendell Roberts, and I'm down in Blakely, Georgia. I attend the St. James CME Church in Damascus, Georgia, and my pastor is Reverend Lewis. And just like to acknowledge my presiding elder, Elder Harris, and of course our presiding prelate, Bishop Brown. I'm just thankful that all of you have taken the time to join us this morning. And before we get started, I would just like to have a little prayer just to ask our Father to become a part of our presence. We thank you for waking us up this morning. We thank you, Father, for being in our midst. And we ask, oh God, that you just lift our discussions, that it might provide some inspiration or some meaning for all of those who are listening. We hope that our discussion will be fruitful and that you continue to be in our midst. Our scripture for today is Proverbs 19:23. The fear of the Lord leads to life, rest, peace, and contentment. The topic that we chose this morning in this 12-part series and manhood is character maturity sufficient to demonstrate courage under fire. This is really an expansive topic, but we are trying to keep it in that manhood mode. First, we will begin with a discussion with the definition of character maturity. And character maturity refers to the ability to make decisions based on character. What we mean by that is moral and ethical qualities and principles rather than emotions. It is the capacity to deal with the real world in a reasonable and an independent way. Maturity comes from mastering a growing set of relational skills we were meant to learn as we pass through the 3 stages of life. And you can see the caption there at the beginning, at the heading, the 7 life stages. We may notice a paradox among people today. Although there are exceptions, this generation is advanced intellectually, but behind emotionally. We are missing many of the markers of maturity and that we should possess. A healthy, mature person is one who develops intellectually, volitionally, emotionally, and spiritually. There's a tendency for a man to show growth with age and experience, but do not be confused with age, because a 20-year-old can be as mature, more mature than a 60-year-old. Now let us look at the first 3 stages of the slide at the top. As we look at the first 3 stages, which has to do with the fetus, a baby, and a child, and childhood, I should say, we don't expect much in terms of development of character maturity in these first 3 stages of the human cycle. As the human cycle continues, we enter the adolescent, which is that 4th picture there. And these factors come into play that help us develop behavior markers. These behavior markers are impacted by things like family relations, which support dreams and goals, where the person may not be sheltered, where they're led by examples, or they're breaking generational trauma or curses, where the families talk openly, where there's true acceptance, where love is unconditional and there's good communication and positive discipline. There are great family values. All of these can be crucial in the development of positive behavior markers. Now, during adolescence, there's a process called pruning of the brain, and this process happens around age 11 to 14, and we lose some cells, connecting cells, and part of the brain. That part of the brain is affected by what is called the frontal lobe that enables us to think clearly and make decisions. Now, some of those things that may impact the missing cells would be hormone defects or genetic defects, infections, drug use, uh, things like trauma to the brain, or even um, fever during pregnancy. All of these things can have effect on the cell development. Now, Dr. Allison Gupta, he's a child development uh, professor at the University of Berkeley, says that as a gardener prunes a tree, a bush, which gives a plant its desired shape, the same thing happens to an adolescent brain. This is why you may see mood swings, uncooperativeness, and irresponsible attitudes, which may result from these changes. The other behaviors in adolescence are factors of multi-interactive influences, which include experiences, parenting, socioeconomic status, individual agencies, social relationships, nutrition, culture, and psychological well-being, and physical environment. All of these have an impact on social markers. When it comes to behavior, the relationship among these variables are complex, and they can change over time with development. During adolescence, most people successfully navigate the transition from independence upon caregivers to self-sufficiency, to self-sufficient adult members of society, where they are able to develop cognitively and emotionally. What are some of the behavior markers we can look for in a mature person? And at what age should this happen? Now, this should happen around the early 20s. We can put a stamp on the fact that most of the time, most adults, you will look at people as being adults at age 25. We got to take our behavior markers in orders of three, and we'll have some discussions after we finish the first three behavior markers. I'll give an overview and ask you to chime in and give your thoughts as we go through this first slide here. As you see, the first slide, taking responsibilities. That's responsibility for your actions, decisions, and their consequences. Own it up to mistakes. Don't view mistakes as a setback. Accept consequences for our words, ready to pay the price for what we say and what we do. And here, hopefully, we'll choose our company wisely. Self-reflection. We take time to examine our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors to gain deeper insight into self-understanding and our strengths and our areas of growth. Recognize patterns of behavior which hinder personal growth and don't see the world as black or white. The third one, emotional intelligence. Understand and manage our own emotions. listen to others and comprehend different perspectives, taking the high road and seeking wisdom before action, and being unshaken by flattery or criticisms. So at this time, hopefully, looking at those three areas, uh, after giving an overview, we'd just like to get your feedback on those first three behavior markers. Anyone?
Roberts, in your initial explanation, you were saying about the different stages.
Yes.
And, you mentioned stage, the age 14, around age 14, and
Right.
the adolescence and that changing, um, when we really look at, especially our young men, and this isn't something new, even with the changing of generations, it's not new. That age 14, or right around that age, that has historically been, where different cultures, not just our culture, Western culture, or African culture, but most cultures look at that age, as where it is vital that we start teaching these, behavior markers.
Yes.
And one of the things I find, especially when we talk about responsibility and self-reflection, we are avoiding responsibility.
Yes.
And that's our youth. That has become a cultural norm that we try to avoid responsibility. Um, um, but when we are dealing with, um, trying to make ourselves more mature, we have to, um, really have that self-reflection and say, is this something that I've done? Is this behavior or this action that I've taken, this decision I made, is it my fault or is it somebody else's fault? But in this culture, all of this has really, all three of these topics have really played out. We blaming each other or blaming other people for the problem.
Yes.
We see that in politics. We see that in culture. We see that in even in our church. We see
Yes.
where we are blaming the reason we are, in the condition we are in is because somebody else, and often we haven't taken responsibility. And that teaching that responsibility at the age of 14 is vital. Because that's, as you mentioned, that's where we're shaping, how that next generation is. And if we don't do that, which our parents did that, and it wasn't in a some very intellectual, systematic program process. Your uncles and the older men in the church, they knew to take time up with you at 14 years old. They knew, um, to spend time with you. They just did it out of nature. I mean, it wasn't a set program. They just did it, and it's important that we find ways to do that again. Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else?
So, I think sometimes it's fearful for young men to try to grow up and make decisions because they worry about the impact that will come from peer pressure that they might have or that they be in. So uh, what Brother Guy is saying is so important because if we don't start early with them and give them opportunities and not be so negative about what they are attempting to do, it would have a profound impact on how they are maturing. Because in that scenario, peer pressure is going to exist throughout your life.
Yes.
And we have to give that understanding to them early so that they're not fearful on making the attempts to grow in manhood. Uh, Brother Guy, you mentioned the fact how men would take up with us in the church. It was so structured positively that when you approach the church, you might be a few blocks away. You start getting yourself in order because of the respect you had for not only just the church itself physically, but the church within the men and women that are attempting to lead you in the right direction. And that's something that's difficult now, I think, for young men. If we just embrace them more, spend time with them early, and share with them some of the conflicts perhaps that we had at that age, they'll see us in a whole nother light. Because what they're looking at is the continuation of the finished product, but they don't know the struggle it took to get to where we are.
Amen. All right. The next slide, please. Okay, the next three are honesty, integrity, continued learning, and relevance. Okay, first, honesty, integrity. What we're dealing with here would be values and truthfulness and transparency, realizing that we hopefully our words are reliable and our promises are kept. We have some moral values and we value right and wrong. Continuous learning. Hopefully here we will go beyond formal education. We'll seek opportunities to expand our knowledge, broaden our knowledge and perspective. We'll develop new skills, open our minds to new subjects and ideas, and go beyond just acquiring information, but refine and do some critical thinking. We will be flexible and adjustable in all situations. We will be resilient. We'll face challenges. We'll understand that there are setbacks and adversities in life, but hopefully we can bounce back and adapt and grow stronger. And failures are inevitable in life, but we respond in a manner that an approach that change, and we are flexible and open. We adjust our plans accordingly and our strategies at the same time. We also have empathy and compassion on the slide, so we'll just continue with that. We hopefully will gain a genuine understanding and understand that kindness toward fellow human beings help will help others, and we'll put ourselves in someone else's shoes. In relation to compassion, we are concerned and care for the well-being of others, and we offer support and encouragement. There's kindness when it's needed the most. We go beyond just sympathy and our action, and we take action to alleviate suffering and understand that words of comfort are always good to express. Now, for your input on those 4 behavior markers, can we get some feedback from somebody?
Integrity, for me, was taught to me early in my life. My and this ties into, I think, what Dr. Leo mentioned a little earlier about being afraid to make mistakes.
Yes.
When it comes to honesty, I learned through the belt and the switch about telling the truth.
Yes.
And of course, I mean, if you don't have to be taught how to lie, that comes natural. And you would lie to avoid the consequences of your behavior. You have to be taught how to be honest. You don't have to be taught how to lie, how to cheat, how to steal. You don't have to be taught those behaviors. They come naturally. Um, but my my grandmother showed me the value of telling the truth. Um, that if I was caught in a lie, there was going to be consequences if I told the truth, even if there was a bad behavior or something that went wrong. We would work on that. I wouldn't get a beating for doing something wrong if I told the truth. And in most cases, unless it was something really, really bad that I did, we would work on it. And when it comes to integrity, my grandfather, who died when I was about 9 years old, he instilled, and to this day, those that are connected in my family still know my word is my bond. If I tell you I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. If I'm and you can find that what I found is throughout the neighborhood I grew up in, other people who would talk that you can if they tell you they're gonna do something, you can believe it. You can bet on it they're gonna do it. And other families that were not taught that, you couldn't trust their word. Um, and continuous learning. One of Brother Roberts, this platform and the changes that we see, especially in some of the more mature parts of our church, with continuous learning, it shows that um, in many cases, the older generations in our church really have the ability to grow. We are on Zoom now. I've been on meetings in the Connectional Church where we had 60, 70, 80 people on a Zoom platform. Um, and we were forced to learn it, but we can. And we can see how it brings benefit to those who can make the transformation, who can continue to learn. A lot of people can't. And we have to really realize when they say they can't, they can't, that they're not willing.
Yes.
And you have to just allow them to stay where they're at in most cases, just have to move on. But these are some good points, all of them. But those are two that stuck out to me. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Next slide.
One quick
Yeah.
one here. I just noticed there's empathy and compassion. Um, uh, Bishop T.D. Jakes did a sermon on the transformation of DNA in a culture when something happens to them. And for over 400 years of slavery, plus all of the other turmoil that we've been through in this country, what he was explaining is that culture picks up a certain DNA. And in some cases, it can be negative,
Yes.
but that leads to that resilience. And when we see what's going on with all the hatred that's going on now, in many cases, Black people are not surprised about what's going on. I ain't say we were happy about it, but we're not
Yes.
surprised
Right.
because we heard what was said. We knew what um, making America great again was going to be about. We knew that. We weren't surprised. It's not that we're happy about it, but when you look at other people who the forces of evil now are at their doorstep, they don't know how to act. They seem surprised. They seem shocked. Um, and they had no compassion when it was us. And now they're yearning for us to help. You know, they're deporting us. Can you help us? Well, we told you not to vote for him, and you had no compassion for us. You said you wouldn't vote for a black woman, and you got, you know, and it's still to us always to save the day again.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that we should be mean or whatever, but it's no surprise, basically what I'm saying. It's just no surprise to us that things are unfolding in the manner that they're unfolding. It's not what we want, but when it was somebody else getting stuck or hung, a lot of people was not compassionate for us. A lot of people were you know, with George Floyd and all the other things that was going on with us, all the police brutality, all the, you know, the KKK coming to our community and all of this stuff. Nobody cares, seems like.
Right.
So we understand when other people are not compassionate to us how it feels. So thank you, Brother Roberts.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this is the scab has been, or the veil has been lifted, or the veil has been broken. And so now they see all of the hate and all of these symptoms. Before they denied all of this. Now they can't deny it. It's open. Yes. Next slide, please. Okay. Uh, self care. Self care, respectful communication, and patience. Uh, we with self care, we need to prioritize our physical and mental, emotional well being. That's important. We need to nurture self. We need to have regular exercise, a balanced diet, restful sleep. Those things are important in terms of self care. Respectful communication. We express ourselves, listen and understand others. Practice tactful communication that builds strong relationship. Have uh, develop an active listening skill and give our full attention to people who are speaking. We need to choose our words carefully and respectful and understand the importance of nonverbal communication and our facial expressions. Uh, when it comes to patience, we need to do everything, understand that nothing happens instantly and not that we don't need to give up easily and recognize that setbacks happens. Value the process of getting to know others. Should be willing to invest time and effort in building a strong connection and understand that quick judgment can cause misunderstanding. Now, I'd just like to have your feedback on those three behavior markers.
I think one of the things in self-care, in order to be effective as we mature in life, if we expect to be around and have a positive results on the seeds that we planted, you
Yes,
got to do a whole lot of living right and cultural changes. And I think sometimes it's almost like the reverse of what our expectations should be, and understanding how people see us. And if you allow yourself to be told who you are by others without reflecting on a relationship that you have with God, you can become distorted. and make decisions that would have a negative impact, not only on your life, on your habits, which would affect your health, and the rest will be history. You would be on a downward spiral. But facing the fact with positive communications, I think on a respectful basis, we can learn and grow in it and do our own research now, especially as young people. I mean, they fact checking every time you say something, and it doesn't matter the age. And that was sort of scary initially, because I remember going to a church in the early stages, and I looked at the marquee and it says, "No cell phones allowed." Well, what that was saying to the younger generation, they don't want us in there. And for a church to reflect that on a marquee, the persons making the decisions didn't understand what the future might look like.
Yes.
And are fearful, perhaps, on accepting that change. And are any ushers on the line? That's the reason I use that as an example, because I remember ushers going down the aisles of the church, telling them to put down those cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
When they had conversation, they realized they were just trying to follow them in scripture, you know. So we have to be careful on watching how we communicate, not only with younger people, but mature people, and be patient enough. Reflect back on what brought you.
Right.
It wasn't your decisions all of the time, because if you had followed your ways, in most cases, when we follow our ways and we're in a troubled situation, it's based on decisions that we made in the past, you know.
Mhm.
So you have to teach and be learners of what you say with patience, because I found out too, it wasn't that hard to get rid of a cell phone when it was a flip phone. When I realized that I couldn't tear it up by my big hands punching buttons, I got excited. And I actually took a class, me and another brother that was in his 60s, uh, with children learning how to use computers and cell phones with them. It was funny because we were the older generation with the younger generation, and it created a bonding effect. And just I was reflecting on that thought this past Easter, how those same little kids, when we took those courses, were celebrating their own children in the worship experience on Easter. And it dawned on me how time had passed, but being patient and both learning uh, and not putting yourself in a box, that you can learn continuously in your life, regardless of age or whatever we want to use as excuses not to do something different in life.
Yeah. Avoiding quick judgments is so important. It helps us in many ways. And it really does a wonderful job of um, eliminating misunderstandings. Yes. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Gratitude, humility, and financial responsibility, and respect for boundaries. Gratitude, here we need to appreciate the blessings and the experiences, whether they are big or whether they're small. Acknowledge the contributions of others and be willing to show appreciation. Humility, we need to remain grounded and modest. We do not need to seek constant validation. We see a lot of that today. Maintain humble demeanor. Financial responsibility. We need to set financial goals. Develop a budget that aligns with our income and expenses. We need to allot funds for savings. Adhere to a budget and avoid unnecessary spendings and debt. A respect for boundaries. We need to understand that there are personal, physical, emotional, and intellectual boundaries. We need to communicate and interact with others in a way that promotes comfort and trust, and, and there's mutual respect. We need to understand that there's a desire for personal space, confidentiality, and privacy. And we need to not overstep or intrude on other person's spaces. And we need to exercise tact and sensitivity. Your feedback on these four uh, behavior markers.
Um, is and just being thankful and having manners all the way across the board has um I never had a problem with having manners growing up, not because I was such a great young man. It's just that it was instilled in me and I saw it everywhere I went. Um I was taught to say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, please, ask for permission. But that's how everybody around me conducted themselves. Everybody in my community conducted themselves in that manner. So when I went places, I was often, especially coming from the South, going into northern areas, sometimes I was looked at as being strange,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you said yes, sir. Ooh, that's
Mm-hmm.
slave mentality. That's that you all. I'm saying yes, sir, to a black man. That slave mentality, I couldn't understand it. And it's just something that's not common anymore. Manners and respect and being grateful and thankful. We are so entitled. Um, we just feel that everybody else owes us something. Everybody owes me something. I don't have to give. I don't have to respect other people, but they got to respect me. Um, so I think I really like that behavior marker. I see it's something that we're really missing. And I'm not saying with youth. I mean, it's grown people who cannot say thank you. As
Yes.
much as I've dealt with my children with that being thankful and great. I mean, they can't say thank you to save their life. Seem like, you give them a birthday present, you call them on, it's just like you're supposed to, you know. But I've always gleaned from others. So I think that was just something that was culturally taught to me in my little neighborhood that I grew up in, church environment and family environment. Thank you, brother.
Anyone else? Okay. Now, how do we?
Financial responsibilities is another one, Brother Roberts. I see some reports sometime that say somewhere around 97% of America has no financial literacy. And that's not 97% of Black America, that's
Right.
97% of America. Um, Not that they don't know how to get money and spend money. They don't understand how money works, the time value of money.
Right.
They don't understand that, yes, when you're young and you're getting all this money and you're able to, jump out of trees and jump on top of houses and all of this stuff that the money's coming, but life isn't going to allow you to continue to do that. And we don't make plans, long-term plans. We live for Friday. Everybody else is um, planning for 100 years planning for the next generation, and we're planning for the Friday party. That's what we're planning for. So
Right.
I think that's something that we need to definitely deal with as men, especially in our community, is financial responsibility.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm appalled by is the fact that you see some, once upon a time, you see a lot of professional athletes go bankrupt. Here, these guys are putting millions of dollars in a week, sometimes in the bank. And then they're doing all of these parties and buying all of these things. They got 14 different cars that are over $200,000 and all this kind of stuff. And um, it's just appalling. Now I'm reading where you see athletes um, don't even touch the money that they make from these teams. They live off of their endorsements. And I said, wow, how great that is. You're living off the endorsements and you're not touching the paycheck, these millions of dollars that's going into the bank each week, whatever. I said, these guys are finally, some of them are finally putting it together. And that's great. Uh, and, little kids, you really have to really start to teach them young. I used to try to teach my son that the first time you see something, you see the price on it. Don't spend the money then. Wait, and you might find a price someplace down the street that's a little cheaper than that price. So don't be so quick to spend your money. Wait, even though you want it, you got to make that sacrifice. Yes. Okay, moving on.
Well, Robert, this
Yes.
in the situation that we find ourselves in even now, I reflect back on how my father and mother and their siblings and our grandparents were actually farmers.
Yes.
And I used to wonder why they were so patient when they planted plants, which turned into crops that turned into food on the table. And I find out now how people are scrambling by advertisements of fear that they won't have anything to eat. So what happens if they announce, let's say, even if it's just bad weather coming, people run to the store and buy out everything in the store. That's a fear tactic. In
Yes.
most cases, indoctrinating us to be better and more consumer oriented instead of being able to be self-sustaining. So, I think we could share more of that with your example about purchasing using the consumer oriented marketing tactics that are influencing our people, both young and old, and begin to teach them other ways to get there. If you shop it, that's
Hmm.
one thing, but if you grow it, that's a whole nother respect for the future of not only you, but your community, your children, your church, the whole 9 yards. So some of the old, I call it the ways that we thought were painful, shows up now in our
Yes.
habits and spending habits and consumer mindedness. So we need to ring it in. And like you say, it's good to see some of these brothers and sisters, pocketing that money first, paying themselves, and being able to live even more fruitfully, because endorsement sometimes is better than the paycheck.
Yes.
But I got a text last night that showed that uh Shadur Sanders, and we know all about why they tried to what I call buck break him and his
Hmm.
but he within the top 10 of sports paraphernalia of rookies, his line of clothing is sold out. And his brother he was picked fifth, right?
Right.
Overall. So it's mindset. And we need to be aware that they're going to try all they can to make you fail. They being not just us, but those that are in power. So we
Right.
need to be careful and follow the teachings and the word closer, even more closer now than ever before. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves upside down and going through some of the same crises that our forefathers went through and even we went through when we're making bad decisions. And respect your boundaries is one thing too. Uh, that's something that is a learned behavior, and you have to be very careful with it.
Right. The sad thing about that is other people try to impose their boundaries on us.
Mm.
That's the reverse. That our society, we need to stay in a certain place, and
Yeah.
that's what they did. That's what they're trying to do to Shadua. You know, he's got to stay in a certain place. You can't rise above, and you can't show a certain swag. And uh, he's not he's not going to allow them to put him in that dictate to him the amount of swag that he's going to have. And it's all going to come back to, you know, Cleveland's going to end up benefiting from all of this
Oh, yeah.
in the final analysis. You
And
know,
his first statement to the media was, I thank God for everything.
yes, yes, that's beautiful. Okay, let's try to bring in that courage into how this fits into maturity. What is the link here? Maturity is the balance between courage and deliberation. This is what a person is able to express. When a person is able to express their feelings and conviction with courage, that creates boundaries. Now, courage without maturity is like a man without a brain. Courage is the ability to do something that frightens one, or the ability to control your fears in a dangerous or difficult situation. While often interchangeable, courage and bravery hold different implications. Bravery can be seen as a response to intermediate danger or threats. It sometimes reflects impulsiveness and actions taken in a stressful context. For instance, a soldier charging into combat might be called brave, yet it focuses on reactions under duress. On the other hand, courage encompasses a more expansive view that includes deliberate choices in the faces of adversities, not necessarily linked to physical danger. Now, we'll address some of these, the moral, the emotional, and social challenges later. Courage is one of the traits of good behavior. Other traits are, let's have that slide, okay? Other traits of good character. First, we have their courage, loyalty, and honesty. Next slide, please. The next traits are integrity, fortitude, and responsibility. Next slide. Humility, compassion, respectfulness, and sincerity. Now, all of these are important virtues that promotes good behavior. It is not limited to a single virtue, but the traits that are demonstrated to make good choices. Understanding courage prompts deeper questions about one's values and beliefs and the principles that govern actions in our daily lives. Now, there are 6 areas where we may show courage. We don't think about these. I've never thought about these. Physical, social. Let's next slide. Do we have those? Yeah. Areas of courage. Yeah. Physical, social, moral, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. Now, the misconceptions can arise regarding motivations behind various acts affecting our society. It is quite possible on one level a person is courageous, but at another level he's respectful. Now, what example I want to give is the fact that let's look at the moral or spiritual area. Some of us have shown to be very moral and very spiritual when it comes to our courage in terms of our actions. But at the same time, we don't have any courage when it may come to a social area. Example, when we were marching for civil rights way back when, how our old uh, four ancestors used to tell us, "Boy, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not right." They couldn't understand, or they were fearful of the physical impact that may come upon them. They had no courage to buck the system because of things that may be taken away from them. For example, the guy that my dad worked for as a farmer told him that if he joined the NAACP or if he did such and such a thing, that he had to move out of his house and he couldn't farm anymore for him. So he's going to lose his employment. So these are levels. This just shows the level of fear that is often presented sometimes as an obstacle, which may be sufficient and a prime motivator for us to be courageous. In fact, understanding of one's fear can lead to a prime insight about the nature of our brave actions. When faced with threats, individuals often have two basic responses. That's fight or flight. And what this involves is the limbic system, which is in the temporal area of our brain. We choose to confront a situation even when fear is palpable. This illustrates what courage can embody. Contrary to popular belief, fear needs not be an adversary. It can fuel the fire of courage. Building an individual's courage is not mere fortifying their capacity to face challenges, but cultivating an environment where they can connect their journey to meaningful actions. They do this through education, through mentorship, a multidimensional approach that can rectify barriers associated with an individual's courage, which leads to profound implications for personal development and social progress. Courage is not the balance, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. We proceed in spite of. The response to difficult situations which an individual may face in life becomes critical. And if we can learn to apply them to everyday situations, it will show tremendous maturity. People who have courage with maturity show mental toughness and remain calm, kind, humble, and down to earth. To overcome fear, they face it, they behave in the right way at the right time. They begin with an end in mind, so there isn't an empty victory. Fear is a universal emotion, and we all experience it at some point in our lives. When we allow fear to consume us with earthly worries, we forget that God is our rock and our refuge. For God has not given us a spirit of fear. A spirit of fearfulness and temerity does not come from God. When we turn to God in the darkest times, trusting God is the refusal to fear. This trust comes from knowing God and knowing that He is good. Once we have learned to put our trust in God, we will no longer be afraid of things that come against us. Our limited prospects prevent us from seeing the full picture, but we must believe that God is working all things for good, even when life doesn't make sense. Rather than give in to fear, We must cling to God's promises and remind ourselves that He has provided His faithfulness time and time again. In the midst of chaos, God remained in complete control. Spiritual maturity helps us address the root causes of fear and help us face them with courage and faith. There's no fear in love, and perfect love drives out fear. Our scripture, Proverbs 19 and 23, tells us that the fear of the Lord leads to life, rest, peace, and contentment. Character maturity, sufficient to demonstrate courage under fire, will occur if we have a healthy intellectual, volitional, emotional, and spiritual commitment. That means that intellectually, if we develop as we should, if we have developed the kind of will, emotional security, where we persist in spite of, where we rise above certain situations, where we're willing to forgive spiritually, where we don't allow uh, fear to creep in, and we have that spiritual maturity that help us develop love, which will drive out fear. We can develop courage under fire. Thank you. That's my end of my presentation.
Awesome presentation, Brother Roberts. And before we move on, want to make sure that everybody had a chance to chime in. If you had any notes or anything that you wanted to bring up or any comments, give you a few seconds here to do so. But excellent, Brother Roberts, excellent.
Oh, this was an awesome challenge, and it just demonstrates me when there are just many things that are involved in our development, and a lot of it is automatic. When that sperm and that egg is fertilized, there are so many things that just happen automatically, but there are so many things that can impact that development occurring, like the brain. Certain things happen, or certain impacts or trauma in the brain, or hormonal disorders, or social environments in our culture. All of these things that can come into play that can hinder or impact us in some way. So this discussion just helped bring all of that back to my mind and help me understand the creature that our God has created.
Powerful, Brother Roberts. We certainly appreciate what you had to share with us this morning. And it pushes us to other levels of understanding because we can reflect and have a better appreciation of the persons that we are willing to witness to, people that are near and dear to us, as well as those that are still seeking Christ.
Yes.
Haven't heard the word yet. And it forces us to be more obedient and become better students of the word. Because if we follow the book, it's a plan, not only for back then, but especially now and into the future. The word is going to always be true. And so I thank you for your presentation. It was fruitful, and was something that we're going to continue to put in practice as we move forward.
Anybody else got anything they want to chime in before we move on?
Or any questions concerning the presentation?
Yeah. Any questions or input?
Yeah. Something that I said that you didn't quite understand, or you want a little bit more background or context?
I would like to share You covered it well though, but fear. Um, um, we have fears, and God gives us that courage. I remember when I went in the military. I'm a little young man coming out of South Georgia, dirt roads, out in the swamp, didn't know much, and boy, I was scared of everything. I mean, I was scared of everything physically, and scared to talk, scared to move, and all the challenges that I went through, especially in basic training. My drill sergeant was there. He spent time, and where I had challenges, he would spend extra time with me and others, not just me. And that time is uh is something that's vital. We have to the biggest sacrifice we're called to make right now is time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're supposed to sacrifice money too, but money comes and goes. But time is that vital resource that many, especially with this being our church, all of us, from the CME church here, we see that in most of our congregations, especially with our men. They 11 o'clock. 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock Sunday morning is the only time they put in at their church doing anything. And all the problems and everything that exists in the church inside the community, there's no more time put in to resolve those problems. But we see in most of our families, in most of the comments we said, there was some people in the community that spent time with us, our families, our fathers. We can all have this grandmama, grandfather, the church members. We are blessed, and it's not something that I've done, and many of us, it's not something we've done to develop into the mature men we are. It's because people before us planted those seeds and tilled the soil and did those things. So we thank you, Brother Roberts, and that fear, that courage, understanding the difference. Well, like I said, moving in the military, I didn't jump out of planes and hang off the side of a building and do the things that all these different things that we're called to do in the military, go into war and get on an airplane, coming out of South Georgia, without somebody showing me and helping me. So we thank you, Brother Roberts. Anybody else got any input? Well, all right, Brother Roberts, we thank you. And as we move on here, what opportunities are possible as ministry to men? What are the opportunities possible for us as ministry to men? And there are so many different opportunities that are possible when we can embrace um, something like our connectional theme to be bold, face now, embrace next, and see new. Um, we're not going to go back.
You're not gonna go back. Yes.
We're not going to go back, and we're not going to go back to the world that's trying to be created for us, and we're not going to go back to the world that we would love to have. All those um, members of my family that have gone, they're not coming back. They're not going to recreate that. So we have to understand that whatever tomorrow holds is up to us. We can't change history, but we do have an impact on the future. So we have to start looking at different options and doing things differently.